Welcome, welcome back. All right, there we are. Welcome back, everybody, to part two of coding a space blaster in GameMaker. So we're going to go ahead and get right back into getting our game to a playable state. I want to get a copy of this game out there tonight so you guys can play it, so you guys can try it, so you guys can see how high of a score you can get, etc., etc. And with this, guys, we are going to check and make sure that we can use the font here. Make sure we're not breaking any kind of uh, copyright or fonts are very important. So you never want to use a font that you don't have the rights to use, such as a font that's personal use only, or a font that you have to pay for to use commercially. So let's go ahead. I know that I got my fonts from DuFont. So if we come in here, guys, let's go ahead and go to, it's actually DAFONT. So it's called Bitwise. All right. So we see the Bitwise here, this font I did get from DuFont. If you guys like this font, you can see that it is 100% free here. I mean, you can use it in any project you want, a commercial project, whatever, you're good to go. If you guys like this font and you want to download it to your PC, it is available right here. So that is where I'm getting this font here. Ignore my son in the background. He's kind of loud. He's playing games and talking to his friends. So you'll have to allow me the luxury of having my son. Yeah, I'm not going to tell my son that he can't talk to his friends. So you will hear that background noise. But this is a great site to get fonts. But let me go ahead and show you guys something about any font website, right? So for example, if we come in to dafont.com, and let's say we're looking for a science fiction font, right? So for example, if I like this font right here, or this one here would be free. I could use this one here. I could use Star Jedi for free. Dream would be free. Same thing with this one here. However, Shareware is a font you would have to check into it and see if you could purchase this font before you use it. By default, you can't just assume and say, oh yeah, I'm going to use this font here that's Shareware. Or Donationware. Donationware, they want you to donate money at probably a certain minimum amount before you can use it in commercial projects, right? Same thing here. Let's say I like this font here, but it says free for personal use. If you want to know more about it, guys, you would want to click on that and it'll give you information about it. And it'll tell you, what you have the rights to use, what you don't, etc. Are all fonts free of charge? And so again, it's going to give you more information about all this and like the frequently asked questions, etc. So free for personal use. You can use it if you're just making a game for you and your family and friends to use that you're not going to charge money for. But if you're going to be selling a game commercially, such as on Steam or whatever, you want to make sure you are not using a font that's free for personal use until you reach out. So right here, it'll say free for personal use. A lot of these will say this. If you go here, it'll say, hey, you want to use this font for a commercial license? You need to email us here and basically pay it, pay the fee, right, to get to use their font commercially. Otherwise, you could be sued. So make sure you're paying attention to that on fonts, guys. All right, but we know that this font here, Bitwise, we can use. It is free for personal, not just free for personal use. It's 100% free for any purpose, right? So let's come in here, guys. And one thing I wanted to do in GameMaker is when I was looking back at the video that I live streamed a little bit ago, I noticed that the sound was really fucking loud when you shoot. So it's also probably not exactly the right kind of sound that I want. But GameMaker allow you to lower the volume of that sound significantly. Also, I could edit it in like Audacity and lower the volume as well. But if we lower that here on the slider right in GameMaker, much lower volume. So it's more like what we want, right? And this kind of sounds more like a shot from the enemy that I want. So I'll probably end up using this sound for like an enemy shot and finding a better shot for the player, right? So Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so let's go ahead and get some enemies coming in here that we can blast, right? So open up our objects. We don't even have an object for our enemy green here. And I want to create a couple of different enemies as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and duplicate this green enemy. And we're going to go sprite enemy yellow, right? We're going to create another version of the same enemy, right? And so for the yellow enemy, we obviously want to we're going to go to images and we're going to colorize this and make this a yellow enemy. And find yellow. Yellow is kind of right here, but you can't really see the difference there. I mean, this part up here is yellow. Let's go ahead and see if we can't adjust that more. Like if we do the intensity a little bit. Something more like that. Okay. That's kind of better. Now, another thing we want to do is we know these enemy ships are going to be coming in from the top and shooting us from the top of the screen. So we're going to transform these and we're going to go ahead and flip these guys, but we want to flip these not horizontally, but we want to flip these vertically, right? Because they're going to come in and they're going to shoot at us from that direction. Same thing with the green enemy that we have here. Edit sprite, transform, mirror flip vertically. We also probably want to make these a little bit brighter. They're kind of dark. So let's see if we can't make these a little bit brighter. Yeah, so we could just have the same intensity, the same levels for our yellow image, and make these a little bit brighter. Now, ultimately, you could just make one enemy ship, and you could, in the code, control, hey, what kind of an enemy is it? But I think it's easier in our game to just go ahead and create different objects for each enemy. Enemy green. And you could end up coming up with names for these too, like, I don't know. We have that enemy. Go ahead and hit OK there. Now we got that one done. Create another object. Object. Enemy. Yellow. And let's go ahead and create these at a minus 90 as well. Because we want these showing up over, like, for example, text if we end up printing our score to the screen or whatever. Right? Now let's go ahead and get our score going. This is something we're going to do in the object controller. Remember, for the object controller, for anything to happen here, such as the stars that we created in the create event, right? We want to make sure the controller is in our game room. And we see that our controller is a object we can't see in the game, but we basically came in here to our objects. We went down, we clicked on the controller, and then just clicked on a spot in the room. It doesn't matter where, because we're not going to see it. And the reason we can't see it, first of all, there's no sprite associated with it. And we can also unclick this visible option as well, right? So the first thing we want to do, guys, is we want to go ahead and draw our score, right? So in our draw event, we want to be able to have a score and draw the score for the player. So let's go ahead and say, also in the controller, in the create event, we want to establish some variables. Go ahead and get some variables going here, not that one. We're going to make this to be a global. We're just going to call it, we're not going to call it the built-in score, because that has other, like, using the built-in score has a lot of different things associated with it that you probably don't want tying in your game. So I like making my own score variable, global score equals 0. And we're really just defining these variables that we're going to use, right? So that's really all we need right now. But we also probably want to go ahead and assign a level, right? Global level equals 0. And then you probably want to have global lives as well. Lives, we don't want that red one. We'll call it chips. Equal. We'll say 3 for now. We're going to assign those variables there. And then we need to get our font that we're going to use for the score. So we're going to say FNT underscore, and we're going to say bitwise, so we know what font it is. And then we're going to say probably 20. And so for this, we're going to, again, if you don't have bitwise, you can get it at the link I've already put in the stream, right? Bitwise. And we'll see how big 20 is. Not that big. We probably want to, we're going to go ahead and make this be bitwise 20 though. And then we're going to duplicate that. And we're going to say font bitwise 30. And we're just going to go ahead and change that. That's probably closer to where we want the score. So in the draw event here, we're going to drag in some code. And we're going to say draw set font. Yeah. We're going to set the font that we're going to be drawing with. And we're going to set this to the font bitwise. It should come up automatically. Draw set font. Draw set, sorry, color. The white. Then we also need to draw. We want to align these with a vertical and horizontal center. And I always forget exactly what that command is. Right here. Draw set H align. B align. Oh, I don't remember exactly what it is, so we're going to go ahead and say draw set line. It is FA. Vertical alignment with center as well. Now we can actually draw our score, right? Draw. There's also, guys, before we actually do this, before we actually go here, we want to be able to, one thing, you can actually get some scripts and stuff like that that other people have made to help you out with some of the stuff, such as putting a comma automatically in score, for example, so that your score isn't like a huge number without any kind of commas. It's easier to read if you have the commas. For example, 1000 would have the 1, 1000 or whatever. So if we come into Yo-Yo Games, string thousands, script, right here. So you would need to log in to Yo-Yo Games. You're going to have to log in if you own GameMaker or GameMaker 2 or whatever. Anyway, and see, this is what I'm talking about. So rather than having your score be like that and looking like that on the screen, it's a lot easier to read if there's commas here. But let me go ahead and provide this here. You would need to log in to actually get this script. I already have this script. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to come into my, let's create new script. Or add existing script. Here we go. This is what we want. This is how we do it. So once you download the script, you can just download that script from the Yo-Yo website, right? You can download it and then you can find wherever you downloaded it at. Here, I'm just going to go into my documents. I'm going to go into GameMaker where I know there's a script already. There's 2 scripts. There we go. There we go. So now we've incorporated the string thousands script. So now what I can do is in my object here, my controller, when I'm actually drawing the score, I can go and I can say if global score equals 0, then draw text string thousands, because I have that. That's what the string is called here. Global. We're just going to actually, we're not going to do that though. If your score is 0, we're just going to come in here and we're going to draw text. We need to say where we want to draw it at, right? So for right now, we're going to say 500, comma 20, comma 0, 0, 0. We're just going to do that. If global or greater than 0, I'm going to actually draw what it is. Draw x 500, comma 20, comma string thousands. And then we're actually going to use our global variable. See what it looks like, see if it's placed in a proper spot. Probably not. We're probably going to want to move it either to the middle or... Okay, so why do we not have the score being printed? Not anywhere. We have our set color set to 0. We have our font set. Let's go ahead and put it in the middle here, guys. 800. Maybe we need to move it down. Oops. I don't think I can guess, because I am aligning it vertically here. Why are we not drawing our... I don't think this has to be visible. Does your controller have to be visible with no sprite for it to actually draw? Wild guess. It does. So see, I just learned something, guys. I hardly ever turn off my controller and make it not visible. So I just learned something there. Like, I always leave, like, every time I've made a controller with no sprite associated with it, you're not going to see it anyway. But in my first video stream of this, I just turned it off, just basically showing people that you can turn, an object, make it visible or not. But you can't see this controller anyway because there's no sprite associated with it. So for any text that you draw to show up, you're going to have the controller visible. So see, I just learned something. And I knew it was going to be something really dumb. And we're basically saying if the score is 0, we're going to show it as 0, 0, 0. Right? Just because we're hoping it looks better. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. So now we need something to shoot. So let's go ahead and we got the objects already made, right? So what we're going to do is we're not going to have the objects, we need to have something create the object. So we're going to come in here again, and we're going to create an alarm in our controller, right? And basically what we want to do is we want to have an alarm 0. You have to assign any alarms in brackets. It can't be like parentheses or anything like that. It has to be one of your alarms, like 0 to 11 or whatever, set in brackets for GameMaker for GML. And we're going to go ahead and set this to 30. So we have our game speed set to 60. So basically this means the alarm is going to go off every half a second, which is plenty much for deciding if we're going to spawn some more enemies, right? So we're going to come in here, and we want to copy that as well. We want to go ahead and say alarm. We're going to have this recheck every half a second. So we want it in the alarm itself. We want to reset the alarm 0 back to 30 so that it does this over and over and over again, whatever's in this alarm, right? So here, we're basically going to come in here, and we're going to have a random number basically say, if first of all, we want to check and see how many objects there are. So we're going to say if instance number, right, in GameMaker, that basically tells you how many objects there are. if there are, we're going to say object enemy green. How you doing, Bill? Welcome to my stream. Oops, I have two objects here for some reason. Less than, we're going to say if, for now we're going to go ahead and say less than 10, right? And then we're also going to say if random 1000 is less than 50, then we're going to come in here and we're going to instance create. And here, where we're going to create it on the X position, we want this to be a random range as well, right? So we want the random range to be anywhere from, we're going to say 0, 1600, anywhere from our lowest possible X, comma, and then we're also going to say, we're going to say a Y position of negative 100, comma. What this is going to do is put the enemy up off the top of the screen for now. We can always adjust this later. And then we're going to go ahead and say enemy green. And thankfully it helps us with that. Okay. So now we're creating a green enemy if this random events happen. First of all, there has to be less than 10 enemy greens happen. This is only going to do this twice a second. I'm going to check this. It's going to say if there's less than 10 enemy greens, and we can always adjust this later, right? And if we have a random number, basically 1 in 20. So basically, this is like rolling a 20-sided die in D&D or whatever, and if it's a 1, then we're gonna, which is bad luck, we get another enemy, right? And it's gonna spawn an enemy. But keep in mind that we're doing this alarm twice a second. So basically, essentially, on average, it's gonna create another enemy every 10 seconds, right? This code should create a new green enemy off the screen every 10 seconds. Now we're gonna make the enemy come in here. We're gonna create code for this enemy, right? So we're going to create code for the enemy here. And we're going to say direction equal. We basically want the enemy going towards the center of the screen or towards at least down. So we're probably just going to go ahead and say 270, right? And we're going to say speed equal. We don't want this thing going. We don't want this thing going that fast right now. Right? We just want it coming off the screen. And when we create these enemies, we're also going to, because these things are big, in the alarm here in the controller, we're going to make this be like 20 to 1580. Because we don't want it being like right on the edge of the screen. We want it at least be in, at least where you can fucking see it. So we're going to create this enemy and we're going to have it go in a speed of 3. So this is going to be really basic. And here we go. Thanks, Bill. All right, so basically we should see enemies spawning in. We can't shoot them yet. They're not going to shoot at us. Basically, they should spawn in, and they should be coming in from the top of the screen and coming down really slow. So it's going to take them a minute to start spawning and coming in here. So there we go, right? So another thing we're noticing is that they are kind of wiggling. It kind of looks like a spider or whatever, right? And they're just disappearing off the bottom of the screen. And we're going to make these so they can't come too low. As we saw in the other game that the reason we're making this whole, tutorial here on how to make a game like this is we had enemies coming too low. Now what we could do is we could have these enemies spawn quicker and have like a random speed. And if they hit you, right, they can kill you, right? So they're spawning way too infrequently right now. So we see that 1 in 20 is basically not enough. So if we want to have them spawning quicker, let's go ahead and say less than 250, and we should get a lot more of them. So here's the fun part, is creating the AI for the enemies. And the good thing is GameMaker gives you a lot of different commands to help you control the enemies. So there we go. We have 2 of them now, and this is basically at least giving us something to dodge, right? So we might have one of our enemies basically come down like this and create things and we're also going to have collisions so that you can blow up and die and lose a life if you have a collision with one of these guys, right? Right now, all we're doing is creating the enemies. We're kind of deciding how we want these enemies to react. So that's why we're going to have different colors of these enemies. We could even go get a different enemy sprite if we wanted to as well. But for right now, we're probably just going to use the same enemy in different colors. Like this, maybe the green one won't shoot at you, or the yellow one, once we spawn it, it'll maybe come in from the left or the right and spray bullets for you to dodge, like red bullets. Since our bullets are blue, maybe the yellow enemy will spawn like yellow or red bullets that you have to dodge, and give you a rainbow of bullets. So because if we leave these green enemies coming down, so the reason we're not getting any more enemies, guys, is because we've already created 10 enemies and they're still down off the bottom of the screen. They're still way lower and they've never destroyed themselves. The first thing we want to do in the green enemy here, right, is we want to say in a step event, we want to check this crap, right? And we basically want to say if y is greater than 920, so that we don't see it actually disappear on the very bottom of the screen. That's why we're going a little bit lower than the bottom level of 900. Then instance destroy. That's why we were not getting more enemies when they stopped spawning, is because they were still active. They were just way off the screen where we couldn't see them. Okay? What am I doing? Basically like that. And semicolons are used in GameMaker to basically tell GameMaker that's the end of your line. There's no more code after that, so we can move on to the next line, right? So now let's go ahead and create, let's make 350 now. We should have quite a few enemies coming at us. You need 800,000 bullets to make it cool. Yeah, right? All right. So now you see we have a lot more enemies. Now, these are wigging out. And the reason they're wigging out here, guys, is because in our enemy, right, in the create event, we want to set the image speed to 0. Because there are 3 images for them to turn left and right. Image 1 is basically it turning left, right. Image 2 is it turning right. And so by default, GameMaker, unless you set the image speed to 0, is going to flip through those images at a pretty fast rate. And that's what's causing them to wig out. So now when they come on the screen, you'll see that they actually look better. Unless you thought they looked better wigging out, you could always do that. But probably what we'll do is we'll have these enemies come in and randomly, these guys aren't going to be that smart, probably. They're probably just going to, the green enemies are just going to be something for you to shoot, right? They're not going to shoot at you. They're going to come down. They're going to have varying speeds, and it'll give you something to dodge. The yellow ones, or maybe red ones, which will actually be a bigger threat, right? First thing we want to do is we want to get some enemies that come in here that could basically create some kind of threat, right? Something to dodge. So we're going to go ahead and do that first of all. So we're going to come in here, and in the speed here, guys, we're going to go ahead and give this a random range as well. So we're going to say random range. We're going to say 2, 5. Now, ultimately, we're probably going to set these to variables so that as you get a higher and higher score, as you last longer and longer, we're probably going to have these things spawn and move even faster. But for right now, this works, right? So ultimately, though, we could say, let's go ahead and set this. Let's go ahead and set minimum speed equal to max speed equal, we're going to say 7, right? And we'll end up using these variables later on, and we'll end up basically saying maximum speed is based on how many enemies you've already shot or how long you've already lasted or whatever. So ultimately, we can go in here into our controller. Let's go ahead and create another variable, right, guys, right? So let's say global timer equals 0.
What is wrong?
And then every alarm, every 30th of a second or whatever, we're going to come in here and we're going to basically say global timer plus equal 30. Because basically this alarm only happens every 30 clicks. So we're basically going to increase this by 30. So now we know here how long you've lasted. So basically we're going to say instead of speed is minimum speed. Minimum speed. And actually, we're just going to go ahead and say maximum speed. right? But we're going to make this a little bit more complicated than just 2, right? We're basically going to say 2 plus a global timer. So if you're lasting, you know, a real long time, so basically 60 would be 1 second. So we really don't want the speed to increase after 1 second. So we basically want to say, okay, if you last a minute, right, that would be 60 times 60. And you can use a calculator to say 60 times 60 is 3,600. That would be a minute. So basically after a minute, you probably want the speed going up a little bit. So we're basically going to say 2 plus global timer divided by 3,000, basically, would basically make it be a maximum of 3 after a minute, right? We also want to put in a stop. If minimum speed greater than 3, then minimum speed equal 3. Right? And then same thing here. Control C, Control V. And for this one, we're going to have it be 2,800 or 2,700, something like that. And we're just going to copy and paste this code here and prevent the maximum speed from being too high. So we're going to say if maximum speed greater than 10, and we need to change this to max as well. Oops. That's base code, so that should basically give us a minimum maximum speed, and these minimum and maximum speed should be bigger based on how long you last, right? So we've already got that kind of in here. So we'll see what that looks like. So now we're going to have varying speeds of these things. See how they are moving faster. So look how fast this one's moving. So this is going to make it kind of fun to dodge, right? Now we need to make it so we can shoot these fucking bastards. Get points. Okay. So to do that, we simply need to come in here and create a collision, right? If you have a collision with the player shot, for right now, we're just going to basically say instance destroy. We're definitely going to make some cool explosions or whatever. We'll instance create an object of an explosion, right? Before we instance destroy ourselves, we want to increase the score, right? So we're going to say global score plus equals. We could say something like 50 here, but let's make it even more. Let's make it plus 50 plus, we're going to make it be 50 plus the speed, right? So, and we're going to make it be the speed times, we have a speed of anywhere from like, say, 3 to 10 or whatever, right? So let's make it be the speed times 5. Okay? That way, the faster they go, you're given more points the faster they're moving, but a base of 50. Well, let's see how this works. And they're not going to look cool. We don't even have any sound effects or anything like that. We just want to make sure the collisions are working. Okay, so to see right here, notice how I have to hit the enemy right in the middle. And if it hits it right on the side, it doesn't work, right? See like how that doesn't work, right? So we want to make it more fun for the player, because the players are going to get upset about that. They're going to say, hey, how come that didn't hit? It doesn't feel good, right? So we want to come in here to our sprite of our player shot. And this is one reason I made this player shot so big on such a big canvas here. Is I've been here before with other games like this. So if we come into the modify mask, which is our collision checking here, right? So we have this automatically, right? If you blow this up, right? It's automatically basically taking the rectangle of the bullet itself and saying, hey, that's all we're going to check for a collision. No, what we want to do is we probably want to go ahead and do a full image. So if it's even close to the enemy, then it's going to blow it up. So it's basically like cheating, right? It's cheating, and it's cheating in the player's advantage here. But players don't notice or care. See, that just, even though it looks like it doesn't hit it, it feels better to the player when you get close if you still get a hit, right? And that's about what you want. Because that was kind of a miss. It kind of looked like a miss. But now, if it's really close, like right on the edge, we're getting a hit, right? Now we just need some sound effects, we need some collisions, and we probably need more of these enemies. We also need to create a collision if the enemy actually hits you. You're going to die and lose a life, right? But we already got some working collisions, some working stuff in here, and we got the score going up for the game, right? So if anybody has GameMaker as well, I'm probably going to upload my full folder of all my files, my code, everything, so that if you have GameMaker, you will be able to download my project here and go in and alter the speeds, go in and alter the code yourself, and you can take the sprites that I've created, the sound effects I've created. If you want to create your own, your own effects or whatever, if you have GameMaker, you'll be able to play around with the code that I've created and hopefully learn from it. Change the speed, change the firing rate, change different things, and see what you can do with the game. Maybe you can improve on the game yourself. So if you have GameMaker, again, I have confirmed that GameMaker is available on websites for less than $12, right? So I'm not going to show you guys how to get those, but I'm sure a quick Google search could help you find a GameMaker, and that's a fantastic value. To be able to get GameMaker here, I prefer it over GameMaker 2. To be able to get GameMaker or GameMaker key, but you would take the Yo-Yo website. I'm sure it would have directions on how to redeem the key on the site you would buy it at. But obviously, I can't assure you that it's going to work because I bought the game back in 2015 directly on the Yo-Yo website, right? So we definitely need to be able to die. We need to show how many lives you have as well. So let's come in here and let's go object player. Let's go ahead and create another object here. And we're going to create an object, and we're going to call this object player lives. And we're going to use the sprite player again. And in here, we're going to lower that. We're going to say image X scale equal 0.7. And then we're going to do that to Y scale. What this is doing is it's basically taking that existing sprite and it's making it only 70% the same size. So it's shrinking our object. And it's stuff you can do really easy with code. So for example, if we wanted to make a boss of the green enemy or whatever, we could create a whole nother green enemy boss or whatever. And we could come in with code like this in the create event that like double the size of it with like image X scale and image Y scale would be 2. And that would be 200% the size. So what we're going to do here with this particular object player lives, is we're going to come in. We want this to be a negative score here. We want this to be like negative 100 or whatever. And we want to figure out where we want to put these in our game, or on our game screen, right? So probably up here in the left-hand score, we're going to basically say in our alarm on a controller. So we basically want to come in here and the same thing as like the controller create event. And we want to create a loop here, right? Control C. We'll go ahead and create this loop here. We'll call this variable L instead of I. If L less than but this code here, you'll see delete, needs to be after we establish how many lives there are, right? And we want to basically say instead of 300, we don't want to print 300 of these fucking object lives on here. We want to say, hey, if it's less than global shifts, right? Then L plus 1. And then we need to basically say if instance create, instead of a random range, we're basically going to say, we're going to make it 20 plus L times it's probably going to be about 20 pixels wide, so we're just going to go ahead and say 25, right? Then erase all that, comma, this is going to be the Y position of our lives is going to be the same, And we want it to be the same as the score. And the score was drawn. Score is probably going to be draw 40. So hopefully this will show you how many lives you have here. We're going to have to update this here in the alarm event, though, so that if you lose a life, it'll basically take one of these away, right? So let's go ahead and see what we got here, see what it looks like. It's not creating our lives right now at all. If L less than, then L plus equal 1, instance create 20, the X position plus L 5. Oh, it's creating stars. We forgot to change the new thing. So it was working, we just didn't have it creating the right object. Object player lives. N9, the noob, never knew you were a programmer? What the hell? Or a game dev? Yeah. Okay, so again, we see that our lives are being drawn up here, right? And we probably want to space them out for more, but we also see that they are wigging out because we don't have the image index set in our player live. We basically want to go ahead and set the image speed here to 0. 0, that way they're not wigging out. And then in the controller create event here, we want to come in here and we basically want to space these out a little bit more, probably 35. That looks like. There we go. Now that shows us how many lives we have. Probably want to come over about 5 more on that, so we probably want to come in here about 25. Okay. So now what we're going to do here is we're going to... I want to go ahead and... I need to rename this. Rename. I got 2 L's there for some reason. Okay. No, I don't want to delete it. I said I want to rename it. There we go. Be careful, guys. There we go. Looks like now. Oh, one thing we want to come into, guys, one thing I always do in my game settings here on GameMaker is I always come over here to Windows, and there's a couple of things I always want to do here. First of all, I want to get rid of the splash screen that says GameMaker Studio. I don't want people seeing that, so I'm going to take that off. Unless I actually come in with my own screen that says, hey, Zaxter99 is a game, Space Blaster or whatever. I could make a new screen or a new splash screen. That way it says the name of my game rather than GameMaker Studio. For now, we're just going to go ahead and remove that. And then there's some more stuff we want to come in here. We want to come into the graphics here, guys. And we want to make it so that you can adjust the window size. So we don't want to start in full screen mode, at least not right now. We want to start having it in a window. But we want to allow switching to full screen, right? We also want to allow the player to resize the game window themselves. And we want to keep the aspect ratio, so leave that as it is, but allow the player to resize the game window. And then you also want to come in here, guys, and you want to use synchronization to avoid tearing. You definitely want to check that. That's going to avoid any kind of tearing when your objects and sprites are moving across the screen. It'll prevent a tearing effect. You definitely want to do that, right? So I always want to check that, and then I always want to allow the player to resize the game window if they're not in full screen mode. And then you hit OK. Thanks for all the likes, guys. Glad you guys are enjoying the content here. And I would always make these like objects here. We looks like we need to space them out a little bit more. Well, that's probably pretty good, right? So we definitely need to be able to make these kill you. So here in the player, we're going to make just like with the enemy green, we have that, if you collided with a player shot. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to add a collision here, right? And if you collide with the player, you want to make sure it's not the player lives, right? If they collide with the player lives, nothing happens. But if this happens with the player lives, we're going to have it explode as well, right? But right now, we're just going to go ahead and instance destroy it. We'll create the explosion later. We just want to get the game working, right? And the same thing here for the player. Let's go into our object player. and we're going to have a collision with the green enemy. And the same thing here, guys. We're going to come in here. We're just going to copy this code here for right now and paste. But we need more to happen than also in the remember how in the player shot you actually got points for shooting the enemy. But if you collide with the enemy and kill it that way, you're not getting any points, which is exactly what we want. Right now we want to have the player, if he collides with the enemy, we're going to have the player die, right? But we want to do something. We need to make sure that our lives are disappearing. And we called the lives in our create event here of our controller, we called the ships global ships instead of lives. Because we didn't want to use the lives that GameMaker has as a constant. So we're going to go ahead and say minus equal 1, right? And global ships minus equal 1. But one thing we also want to do here, guys, is we want to set some kind of alarm so that these player lives up here, right, that are being drawn up here, we want to have some kind of alarm set so these things know to disappear as well so they can be recreated and show the proper number of lives, right? So we're going to go ahead and come back into the create event of the controller, and we're going to create a new variable, and we're just going to call this something we'll remember, right? Lives destroy. We're going to call this, it's just going to be either a true or false, right? So we're going to say false. And here we're going to basically say global lives destroy equal true. So that over here in our player lives, we're going to have a step event now. And we're going to drag in some code. And we're going to basically say, if this happens, we'll see. John Rinaldi, thanks so much for that subscribe here, man. I appreciate it on YouTube. If global lives destroy equal true, then instance destroy. Now the question we have to have here is all of these lives are going to destroy if we lose a life. And to test that, we're going to go ahead and test the game. Notice how we got rid of the GameMaker logo here, right? Well, let's go ahead and die here. Boom. Right? And we lost our number of player ships up here. We're also not respawning. Notice how we're not respawning, even though we had 3 ships. So we got to fix those problems. So the first thing we want to do here is we want to say we're destroying our lives. So in our alarm here on our controller that happens every second, right? We want to come in here and we want to say if instance exists object player, right? But we're not wanting to check to see if the object exists. If you exist as a player, we want to see if you're not there. So to do that, you simply put in an exclamation point before the instance exists. And that's basically saying, hey, is there not a player on the screen? We also want to make sure that you have lives. So we're going to say global, and we call the lives the global ships, right? Greater than 0, right? If you have greater than 0 ships and you don't exist, we need to respawn you, right? So we're basically going to go ahead and instance create 800, comma, I don't remember where we spawned this guy, but we're just going to go ahead and say 700, height, comma, object player. And we need to do something else. Does anybody else know what we need to do? If we recreate the player, right? Remember how we made these things disappear with a step event saying, hey, if you lost a life, then we're going to destroy ourselves. We basically need to reset this variable here that caused these things to get destroyed. So we basically need to say global lives destroy equal false, right? You need to reset that back to false because you just created a new player, okay? And then in the create event here for the controller, we was also drawing the number of lives that you had. Well, we want to redraw these as well. We want to redraw our lives every half a second as well. We want to make sure that we're drawing the number of lives that are there, right? And we want to make sure that we're not redrawing a billion different object player lives on top. It'd be in the same position, but we don't want to sit there and create 9,000 player lives images up here in the top left over and over and over again. So we basically want to check here, right? And we want to basically say, we probably just want to put this code right here every time we create a new player. So let's go ahead and do that. You'll see. We're going to delete that. We're only going to redraw the lives if they're gone and after we've created a new player, right? Otherwise, it's going to be fine. So we're going to come in here. We're going to tab this over. Oh, let's just tab this all over. There we go. So this should work now. Obviously, it's not going to look very good, but we haven't created all the polish and special effects. Do I GitHub account? I don't have a GitHub account. So let's go ahead and die and see if this works. See if we actually lose a life. Boom. There we go. We respawn, and now we only have 2. We come over here, we die, and we respawn, and we only have 1. Right? And then bam. So now basically we need to have another check in place that if you lose all your lives, it's going to say game over. So with that, guys, we have now enemies in the game. They do respawn. You can actually die. We need to create a game over screen, right? But as you can see, you know, it's creating a little while, especially talking about everything I'm doing. It does create a little bit of time to make even a simple game, even a simple 2D space shooter game. So this isn't something you can really do, you know, in 10 minutes. A lot of people will look at the simple graphics on something like this and say, oh, I could make that game in 10 minutes or whatever. No, it doesn't happen that quickly. Granted, keep in mind that I am by no stretch of the imagination an expert game developer who has made, you know, tons of AAA games or anything like that. In fact, I've never read a book on game design or game development. I've never taken any kind of course. I've never done any Udemy courses as of yet. I bought a few, but I've never actually went through them and learned them. Everything I know, I basically self-taught just by playing around and learning, just like you kind of seen me do here. But, you know, we can die now. You can, you know, score as many points as you can. Granted, I haven't created a game over yet, but we will work on creating a game over. Right now, I'm just working on getting gameplay coming in. And I think we're going to leave our green ships basically just coming in like this. Starclaw, Battle of Space, Starspace, Nebula. We haven't completed our game yet. The game is already, I would say the game is already more playable than this because there's not all this crazy chaos to dodge, right? Your ship doesn't, like in this game here, your ship will, if you just don't hold any controls, it will drift off the screen. And I mean, they've created a game over screen or whatever, but we're going to have a fancier game over before we're done with this. We will have different kinds of enemies here, but we're never going to have these enemies in a situation where, you know, there's bullets coming at you from left and right and below you and everything like that, because we're only going to have enemies shooting downwards. So we're going to create like probably a yellow enemy that either comes over from the left or the right, and will shoot straight down at you. So to just try to create more enemies for you or more bullets for you to have to dodge, as well as the green ones. And then we'll probably create something else that will, you know, be another threat as well. But I'm going to go ahead and upload this file. I will put a link to the project file on all my parts of this, you know, this game project that I'm making. So you guys can download this project file into your game maker yourself and play around with it. Maybe learn from it or whatever. So if that's something that any of you guys want to do, look for that coming in the description of these videos. Or I'll have a download to the most current project file so you guys can go play with these. You guys can go play with my code. I'll probably also, before I upload it, I'll probably comment exactly, you know, I'll probably put comments in here like this. So for example here, check for player lost life and respawn player, as well as update lives. Top left. Update player lives. Top. This will make it easier for new people to like GameMaker or whatever that want to learn by having these comments. These comments don't do anything; they're just for people to read. So if I come in and comment, you guys will be able to see, hey, these 3 lines are just creating, you know, basically resetting this global variable here, and it'll make it easier for players to read my code and what's going on. Because as this game gets bigger and bigger, you know, the going to be more complex, and comments can definitely come in useful, especially for somebody else trying to read my code and figure out what's going on. Anyway, guys, we're going to go ahead and stop this video. We're going to try to keep these videos to a little over an hour in length if possible, and we're going to continue with the development of Space Blast, a free project that you guys can both read code yourself or learn from the code, or play for free. You know, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this game. I'm going to have a playable game here on GameJolt. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.